the Pac-Man episode of Secret Level is nightmare fuel. Hello friends, it's ML. We're in the workroom today. You know why we're here. You clicked the thumbnail. We're working on some over-the-garden wall-inspired earrings featuring the iconic character Enoch. I'm in my I don't care if I get paint on it outfit, so let's get started. Here is the inspiration sketch, and here are the materials which I'm going to try to bring that to life. I've got some wooden beads. These are a little less than an inch, probably about 7/8. I've got some ear wires, some bead caps, which I'm going to use to get this effect, that kind of top of the bag, top of Enoch's head effect. For the tassels, I'm going with 2 colors to get the effect from the inspiration photo. So we're looking at DMC 3346 and 3364, and just some other jewelry making materials to help this all come together, as well as paints, paintbrushes, and some Sharpie markers to get the features onto the wooden bead. To assist with the painting process, I'm creating some painting rigs out of toothpicks. I'm adding a dab of hot glue as a ledge to give the bead somewhere to sit, so it doesn't slide right off the toothpick. Alright, so we've got kind of a pumpkin orange and then a darker orange, maybe some orange with some brown in it. So we'll see where we can go from here. Get a base coat down. It's awfully bright. To get a color for the base coat that matches Enoch's more muted palette, I work with a pumpkin orange color and add in some yellow ochre, a mustardy yellow color. Let's see how that'll meld with. Yeah, that's good. All right. At this point, I started chatting about Over the Garden Wall and animated shows, completely forgetting that I'd be speeding up the painting footage. Because really, who wants to watch me paint in real time? It's about as exciting as watching paint dry. If you aren't familiar with Over the Garden Wall, it's a Cartoon Network miniseries about 2 brothers, Wirt and Greg, and their journey into the unknown. It's beautiful, whimsical, weird, and wonderful all at once. It's absolutely perfect for this time of year. The autumnal vibes are unmatched. I usually think of it as early fall viewing, but it works just as well in November, especially in those later episodes when winter starts to creep in. It's become one of my must-watch comfort shows every year. These days, most of the shows and movies I really enjoy are animated, and that's not surprising considering I grew up on Saturday morning cartoons, after-school shows, Disney movies, and The Simpsons. Honestly, in my opinion, some of the most creative storytelling out there right now is happening in animation. From the past few years alone, movies like Nimona and The Wild Robot really stood out to me, although The Wild Robot is currently banned from rewatching in my house, because it hits on the same emotional level as that Futurama episode where Fry's dog waits for him, and I just cannot handle that level of heartbreak again. There's also been a fantastic wave of animated shows: Arcane, Love, Death, and Robots, Has Been a Hotel, Hell of a Boss, Harley Quinn, even the animated Predator series, and Secret Level. The Pac-Man episode of Secret Level is nightmare fuel. That episode in particular, I still can't decide if I liked it or didn't, but it definitely stuck with me. Anyway, after that little tangent, circling back, Over the Garden Wall remains one of my favorites. The storytelling, the atmosphere, the music, the visuals, it's all just so good. If you haven't seen it, I can't recommend it enough. It usually streams on Hulu, but the DVD is also available to find online if you prefer physical media or just like adding to your cozy fall collection.
I have several coats of orange on these. I'll probably keep going, but while the coats are drying and maybe I'm cheating a little with the blow dryer, I'm going to prime the bead caps with orange Sharpie so I can use some of the same paint that I'm using on the beads on the caps. And I'm not sure if the acrylic will stick to the bead caps unless it has something to stick to. And I'm hoping the Sharpie will stick to the bead caps. So let's find out. Let's just try to do it the old-fashioned way. Let's see here. All right, that seems like it may be working. Yeah, it doesn't come off too much, so maybe once it dries, that'll work. I probably should have gloves on, but... And actually the color isn't bad. It's not a bad match. All right. I'll dry everything up and give everything a coat, and then I'll do the insides of the bead caps. All right, that was the last coat. I'm gonna give everything a nice dry and then sketch out lightly the segments for the different shades of the pumpkin face. I'm not exactly sure the best way to get the lines consistent. Maybe some string. Balance. Let's try this. If this doesn't work, editing.
It may be a little difficult to make out, but I wrap the thread around the middle of the ball a few times to bisect it. Then I lightly sketch a pencil line along that thread.
It's not too bad. I'm sure if this will show up. So there's one line. And I'm really just trying to eyeball it for evenness. I know this is not going to be perfect. These are just earrings. But trying to find the best way to segment these. Let's see, does that look even? Evenish. Looks like the holes are slightly off center.
I keep wrapping the thread around the bead until I've divided it into 8 mostly even segments, just like the sections on Enoch's face. This gives me a nice guide for where to leave the base coat showing and where to paint in the darker areas.
I should note that for the first color, I used Craft Smart Pure Pumpkin. And then I used this Liquitex Basics Yellow Ochre. First I used too much of the yellow ochre and then had to add more pumpkin to get a dulled down pumpkin color. Enoch's colors aren't super bright. Everything has that warm fall dulled down tone to it. So that's why I'm not going for pure pumpkin, but you certainly could. If you started with orange wooden beads and just added the extra color, that would work too. But this is the route that I am going. All right, so back to inspiration picture. All right, his colors. If this is the lighter color, the next color is going to be pumpkin, maybe with a little red, maybe with a little brown. Let's see what we can mix up. Pumpkin. I am not the best at color mixing. I just kind of mix until I'm happy. So I don't have any tips really, other than, just keep trying. That might work. This is burnt sienna. See how that, if I add just a little bit, where that gets us. So it's every other pumpkin groove. And the right side, okay, the right side of the nose is going to be the darker color. So let me see where I want the fronts to be on this. Start with this guy. As I was mentioning, you could start with orange beads. You could sculpt these out of some air clay, sculpt little pumpkins. You could 3D print some little pumpkins, ones without faces, and then work the Enoch face into that. Any of those options would work. Probably will need a few coats to get rid of the pencil line for sure and to get that neatened up, but let's keep going with the other one. I'll work on letting this coat dry and carrying on with a few more coats, and I'll see you when those are all set. The paint is now dry. I'm going to sketch the face on with pencil and then move to Sharpie paint pen, as I think that'll give me the most control over those teeny tiny features, and we'll go from there. This is a very rough angle. Alright, I'm gonna move the camera.
This part took ages, precision, patience, and a whole lot of tiny careful paint pen strokes, building the features slowly so they stay crisp and expressive. Real-time me was moving at a glacial pace, so you're seeing the fast-forward version. It was pretty satisfying to start seeing his features come alive in a way that feels like the animated character. The little toothpick stands came in handy, and also made them feel like vintage cupcake picks. The colors aren't quite animation accurate. I swapped in a light gray for the orange outlines and white for the creamy teeth, since that's what I had in my paint pen stash, but it still feels true to the over the garden wall aesthetic.
And here is where I'm at. I am going to let those thoroughly dry. In fact, it's the end of the day, so I'm going to let them cure overnight, so to speak, before I go in with fine point pen on the teeth. I have some micron pens. This one happens to be a brown. I have a bunch of black. I'll see what looks best to get the teeth in there. Brown might work pretty well because it won't be as contrasty, but so as not to screw up the paint job, I'm going to let it sit before doing the detail work tomorrow. So I will see you then. Good morning, friends. It is day 2, and today is really about putting the teeth in and getting the tassels done in assembly. So hopefully it goes rather quickly. Let's get crafting.
I penciled in the teeth first, always easier to tweak things before committing, and then traced over them with a brown micron pen to finish off the faces.
For the tassels, we're going to mix the colors to get the light and dark strands. I'm thinking maybe a 2-inch tassel. I'll go a little longer just so I can cut it and decide. Normally you would kind of wrap them around some cardstock. I'm going to try to lay them out so I can get a good mix. Alright, I've organized them a bit more, randomized them, and now we're just going to find roughly the center. And tie that in a knot. And now we have a variegated tassel, all the different colors. There's probably easier ways to do this. I got a little bit more fiddly than I had intended. I don't mind the straggly ends because they're closer to what Enoch looks like. Even some of these have a little bit more personality where they look like his arms, but I will trim off some of these longer bits. And we'll do that again for the next one. Now at this step, I could add a wrap around the top of the tassel, but I want to get them assembled first so I can see where I would need to place that. Set some of these things aside. All right, let's see if these will be long enough. I don't know if they will. It's going to be close. I'm going to step that up to a longer. From here, I'm going to tie the tassels onto the ends of these pins. Beeswax. Let's see if we can get that through. And at this point, you can just let the ends kind of flow into the tassel. Let's assemble. All right, so I've got the pin run through the head. So you get more light down here. And now I'm going to put the little cap on for his little frill. I don't mind that it moves, but if you wanted to, you could add a little bit of super glue at that point to tack it on to his noggin. Oh, actually, here's how I'm going to do it. There we go. Now, and then the cap is making this more challenging. I could always put a bead in there, I guess. All right, it's getting there. Nip off the excess. Let's see, that'll come back down. So let's try about there. Sometimes you can even straighten it up a little bit. Ta-da! And then from here, opening and closing clasps, you always want to go side to side, never pull out like on the jump rings and whatnot. And then you have a little guy. Thank you, friends, for joining me over the garden wall on a crafty adventure. I think these little guys are filled with personality, and I hope you enjoyed following along, maybe crafting along. I love watching makers when I craft, so I hope you do as well. If you liked this video, please consider subscribing and hit that like button. Leave me a comment below. What are your favorite fall animated series, shows, movies, or just movies that aren't animated that kind of get you through that transitional period from fall to winter? And take care of yourself. I'll see you next time for more crafting, thrifting, tiki, and Halloween adventures.